Today I've got a Vauxhall zafira that won't start. Just nothing. It's not even cranking. I've scanned it already and I've set up some stuff already. CAN Bus faults. No communication to the engine ECU. There's a few faults there. I've got a breakout box connected to the 16-pin connector. Looking at a 2-channel scope here, and you can see those signals don't look like they should be. They're both, well, this is 1 volt per division, so they're both sitting at 1 volt, and they're both going up the same way instead of being opposites to each other. So that's not how it should be. So what I'm going to do is go to the engine control module, since we're not communicating with it, and unplug it and see if that improves this. That's where the ECU goes in the wheel arch. I've disconnected it. Also, looking at it, doesn't look like it's got corrosion in there. Doesn't look too bad. So we'll go and see what the waveform looks like. So now I've unplugged it, it looks much better. I've got 1 to 2.5 volts to the center line, and both lines are on top of each other. It's like a mirror image of each other now, so it looks better than it did before. And that's just unbolting the ECU, the engine ECU, so that would make it look like there's a problem with the engine ECU. But I do need to check for powers and grounds anyway. But it certainly improved it since I've done that. I'm checking the resistance now with the ignition off. It's 115 ohms. I could have used this, but I want to come back to the scope later, so I've just left it, and I'm using this one instead. 115 ohms across pins 6 and 14. So that means it has got to have one of the 120 ohm resistors in the engine ECU. I've removed that. And if I plug the engine ECU back in, this should go down to 60. Although when I plug it back in, I think we'll get the messy waveform again. So I'll just check that. Plug it back in and see what happens here. The resistance will change back to 60. So I'll try that first with the ignition still off. I'll plug in the engine ECU. The engine ECU is plugged back in now, and I'm down to 60 ohms across pins 6 and 14. So now what I'm going to do is see what the pattern looks like on this again if I plug it in. So I'll get rid of these two, plug these back in, and put the ignition back on. I find the key. And I'm back to that messy signal again. So when I unplug it, that improves, so it would make you think that it is a problem with the engine ECU. So now I'm going to check all the powers and the grounds at the engine ECU. Down here at the engine ECU again, I've got 2 red wires. Well, they have a blue stripe, but the red, and then I've got 3 thick brown wires and 2 thick reds. So you could take a guess the reds are the powers and the brown are going to be the earths or the grounds. So what I'm going to do is check, am I actually getting power to those power wires, the 2 thick ones. Here I am in one of those 2 red wires and I've got no volts. I'm going to switch this to another wire, the other one out of the 2 red wires. Still no volts, so now I'm going to try and give it power. So if I come into here and go into active, I want to give this power. So what I'm going to do is I'll raise the amps a bit. So I've got enough amps for the engine ECU. And I'm going to go to latch and switch it on. That's on now. I'm going to see what the waveform looks like. The waveform looks much better now. Now that I'm giving it power, I've still got it latched in with that power probe that I'm using. The smart hook, or whatever it is. And now I'm going to try and start the car. And it started. Got the engine light on, and well, the other light went out. I'll see if I can clear them in a minute. The main thing is it now cranks. It wouldn't crank before. With the ignition on, we get a good waveform. What I've done with this, because we don't have somebody to hold a power probe on every time they want to use the car, and I've got a fault with the fuse box, I have just made a little bypass for now. The fuse box, I took it apart, it's corroded inside, I can't do much with it. So I'm going to have to leave it and work with it for now. It needs a fuse box. The fuse box is going to need to be coded though. You can't just put one in, it won't work. I've tried that in the past and we had to change the circuit board inside over with the old one. This one is also corroded, but by bypassing it with the power probe, you could get it to start. So I've done the same idea, but I'm using a relay, so it gets switched on with the ignition on, and it will be switched off when the ignition's off. So it saves somebody being there with the power probe. It's only a temporary repair for now, just to help somebody out, but ideally it should be getting a fuse box. So I'll show you what I've done. So I've taken a power from here, that's permanent feed through a fuse into the relay, and then the relay goes to the wires underneath the board that go down into the ECU. That's the big wire for powering the ECU, so that side of it's going to be okay. And where we're getting the control, we've got one side of the relay is straight from the battery, and the other side is going to be switched on. It will be given 12 volts when the ignition is switched on, and that is the black wire that goes from here right down to the engine ECU. The little black wire has 12 volts with the ignition on, so that's how I'm going to power this up. So now I'm just going to try it and see that everything's working okay as it should be. I'm going to crank it. This time it's using the relay. See, it wouldn't crank before. That was the problem, it wouldn't crank. And we have a good signal here, so I'm going to see if I can clear all the fault codes. And that's just a temporary repair. It may last for a while. It's an older car, so they may just live with it. There's no engine lights on now, just the handbrake on, seatbelt and the door open, but I'm not worried about those. No engine lights, no ABS, nothing like that, so that will do. It's not a proper fix, but it's a bypass of something that's not working, just to get it going for now. If it plays up again, they can just get a fuse box. Hopefully this has been helpful to somebody. Thanks for watching.